The Sister Wives Tell All Part 4 just gave us the showdown nobody saw coming when Janelle Brown and Jenn Sullivan went head to head, calling each other liars over the Coyote Pass sale. And what Meri Brown revealed about catching Janelle in a backdoor deal with Cody is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about who the real villain has been all along. Subscribe now because this confrontation changes the entire narrative of season 20. Before I tell you about the moment when Cody Brown called Jenn Sullivan full of shit right to her face during the tell-all, I need to explain why Meri Brown stopped trusting Janelle months before the Coyote Pass sale even happened, because the receipts that Meri kept and the conversations she had with Jenn are about to blow this entire backdoor deal conspiracy wide open in a way that makes Janelle look like she's been lying about her involvement the entire time. Let's rewind to understand how we got to this explosive tell-all confrontation, where former allies are now calling each other liars and nobody knows who to believe anymore, because the Coyote Pass property saga has been the source of more drama and betrayal than any other storyline in Sister Wives history. Back in 2018, the Brown family purchased this 14-acre property in Flagstaff, Arizona for $820,000 with grand dreams of building a family compound where all four wives would have their own homes and the children would run freely between houses in this massive plural family paradise that Cody kept promising would unite them all. The property was split into four separate parcels, but here's where things get legally messy and financially suspicious in a way that would later fuel accusations of backdoor deals and betrayal. Because Cody's name appeared on all four plots while Robin's name was on three of them, and somehow Janelle and Meri's names weren't properly documented on the parcels they were supposedly entitled to own. This ownership structure was a disaster waiting to happen, because when three wives left Cody between 2021 and 2023, suddenly there was this massive property that nobody wanted anymore, but everyone had financial claims to. And untangling who was owed what became a nightmare of accusations and conspiracy theories. Christine was the first to leave in November 2021, and she signed over her portion of Coyote Pass in exchange for keeping the full proceeds from the sale of her Flagstaff home, which meant she walked away clean without having to deal with the complicated mess of selling the property. Then Janelle announced her separation in December 2022, followed by Meri's official split in January 2023, leaving Cody with only Robin and this massive piece of land that represented everything the family used to be before it all fell apart. The property finally sold in April 2025 for $1.5 million, with each person supposedly walking away with 25% of the profits. But getting to that point involved months of accusations, suspicion, and what Meri would later describe as deliberate attempts to cut her out of her fair share. What made the situation even more toxic was the fact that Cody had borrowed money from both Meri and Janelle to help Robin purchase her massive Flagstaff mansion. And during the property negotiations, Cody kept bringing up this loan as if it entitled him to take more than his fair share of the Coyote Pass proceeds. Meri had given Cody and Robin money from the sale of her Las Vegas home, and Janelle had done the same. But instead of being grateful for their financial help, Cody used those loans as leverage and justification for why he deserved a bigger cut of the property sale. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what Meri noticed about Janelle's behavior that made her suspicious enough to confide in Jenn Sullivan about a possible conspiracy. But first, you need to understand that Meri and Janelle have never been close, and their relationship has been strained for over 30 years. Which means when Janelle started acting weird about the property sale, Meri's gut instinct told her something shady was happening behind her back. The foundation of distrust between Meri and Janelle wasn't built overnight. It was carefully constructed over 3 decades of resentment starting from the moment Janelle married Cody in 1993, just 3 years after divorcing Meri's brother, Adam Barber. Think about how fundamentally wrong that situation was from the very beginning, because Janelle had been Meri's sister-in-law through marriage to Adam, and then she turned around and married Meri's husband, crossing a family boundary that should have been absolutely off-limits in any normal situation. Janelle met Cody in 1989 while she was still married to Adam, and she described the connection as a singular experience, like remembering something I had forgotten, which is not the kind of language you use to describe meeting your husband's brother-in-law platonically. By 1990, Janelle had divorced Adam, attended Meri and Cody's wedding as a guest, and within 3 years, she was spiritually marrying Cody herself and moving into Meri and Cody's Wyoming home as the second wife. The living situation was an absolute disaster from day one, with Janelle describing Meri as demanding and overbearing, and Meri admitting she was harsh and aggressive toward Janelle because the entire situation was impossible to navigate emotionally. Meri was supposed to welcome into her home the woman who had divorced her brother and then immediately pursued her husband, and somehow make that work as a sisterly plural marriage relationship, which is asking the impossible of any human being with normal emotions. The resentment only deepened when Janelle started having children with Cody, eventually giving birth to 6 kids while Meri struggled with infertility and had only one child, Leon, born in 1995. In the polygamous hierarchy, where a woman's value is often measured by how many children she produces for her husband, Janelle's 6 children versus Meri's one child created an imbalance that colored everything about their relationship for the next 30 years. Janelle and Cody connected on what Janelle called a cerebral level, which many interpreted as a dig at Meri's intelligence or ability to have deep intellectual conversations with Cody. And that subtle positioning of herself as the smart wife, while Meri was just the emotional jealous wife, set a pattern that would repeat for decades. So when it came time to negotiate the Coyote Pass sale, and Meri started noticing Janelle acting evasive and secretive, all of that history came flooding back, and Meri's instinct was to assume the worst because Janelle had already proven 30 years ago that she was willing to cross boundaries and pursue what she wanted, regardless of how it affected Meri. During the tell-all, Meri sat down with host Sukanya Krishnan with her best friend Jenn Sullivan right by her side, which was already a power move that signaled Meri wasn't going into this confrontation alone without someone who had her back and who would validate her version of events when Cody and Janelle inevitably tried to gaslight her. When Suki brought up the Coyote Pass sale and asked Meri if she suspected that Cody and Janelle had been making plans without her, Meri didn't hesitate to confirm what fans had been speculating about for months, based on the way the season had played out with its hints and accusations. She was basically treating me the way Cody did throughout most of our marriage. Meri revealed about Janelle's behavior during the property negotiations, and that comparison is absolutely devastating when you think about how Cody treated Meri for decades with dismissal, contempt, and complete disregard for her feelings or her financial security. Meri continued explaining to Suki that there came a point where she told Jenn about her suspicions because Janelle's communication patterns had changed dramatically in a way that felt deliberately evasive and secretive. There was a time that I said to Jenn, I'm like, there's probably something going on because Janelle's not really talking about stuff. Every time we have a conversation, she's not bringing stuff up, she's not. Meri recalled, trailing off because she didn't even need to finish the sentence for Jenn and everyone watching to understand what she was implying. Janelle had gone from being somewhat communicative about the property situation to suddenly being tight-lipped and vague whenever Meri tried to discuss the sale, which is classic behavior of someone who's hiding something they don't want the other person to find out about. Meri went on to explain that she didn't confront Janelle directly about her suspicions at the time because she fundamentally didn't trust Janelle to tell her the truth, even if she asked point blank what was going on. I didn't trust Janelle at the time and doubted that Janelle would be honest with me about what was going on, Meri admitted, which shows just how broken down the trust between these two women had become after 30 years of being sister wives who never actually liked each other very much to begin with. The fact that Meri felt she couldn't even have a direct conversation with Janelle to ask if something was going on speaks volumes about the dysfunction in their relationship. Because in a healthy situation between two adults who respect each other, you would simply say, hey, I'm noticing you're being kind of vague about the property stuff. Is there something you're not telling me? And expect an honest answer. But Meri knew from 3 decades of experience that Janelle wouldn't give her a straight answer, that she would deflect or minimize or make Meri feel like she was being paranoid for even asking the question. Here's where Meri's suspicions get validated in the worst possible way, because Cody himself admitted on camera during the tell-all that Janelle had been pressuring him to move forward with the Coyote Pass sale in a way that would have left Meri out of important decisions and potentially out of her fair share of the money. Cody told Suki that after they received an offer on the property, Janelle was worried about losing the buyer and started pushing him to either comply with Meri's wishes or force the sale. And those two words, force the sale, are absolutely chilling when you understand what they mean in the context of property law. Forcing the sale would have meant selling the property without Meri's full consent or agreement, potentially cutting her out of negotiations or giving her less than her fair 25% share. And Cody admitted that he got into this place where I was like backdoor deal almost with Janelle. Let that sink in for a second because Cody just confirmed on national television that he and Janelle had discussed making a deal behind Meri's back, which is exactly what Meri had suspected when she noticed Janelle acting strange and refusing to communicate openly about what was happening with the property. The legal implications of forcing a property sale are serious because even though Cody's name was on all the parcels and he technically might have had the legal right to sell without everyone's agreement, doing so would have been a massive betrayal given that everyone had a financial stake in the property and had contributed money to its purchase. Cody forcing the sale without Meri's input could have meant her getting screwed on the final price or not having a say in which buyer they accepted, or being presented with a done deal where she either accepted what Cody decided or got nothing at all. When confronted with this accusation during her portion of the tell-all, Janelle's response was to deny that any backdoor deal existed and to claim that Cody was lying about her involvement, telling Suki there was no backdoor deal, despite Cody's own words suggesting otherwise. But here's where Janelle's denial starts to fall apart under scrutiny because, in Cody's recounting of their conversations, Janelle didn't just passively listen when he suggested forcing the sale without Meri's consent. She actively told him, well, you could, as if giving him permission or encouragement to move forward with cutting Meri out. Those three words, well, you could, are damning because they show that Janelle wasn't horrified by the suggestion of forcing the sale and cutting Meri out. She was acknowledging that it was a viable option that Cody should consider if necessary to avoid losing the buyer. That's not innocent conversation about property logistics. That's tacit approval of screwing over your former sister wife to make the sale happen faster. And the fact that Janelle said this to Cody without apparently warning Meri or pushing back against the idea shows where her priorities actually were during the negotiations. Now I'm going to tell you about the moment when Cody called Jenn Sullivan full of shit during the tell-all and how that led to accusations flying back and forth about who's lying about Robin's role in all of this. But first, you need to understand how Jenn became such a central figure in this drama simply by being Meri's friend and advocate when nobody else in the family was willing to stand up for her. Jenn Sullivan's presence at the tell-all wasn't just moral support for Meri. It was a strategic power play that signaled Meri was done being intimidated or silenced by Cody and Robin. And having Jenn there meant that Meri had someone who would back up her version of events and call out any lies or manipulation attempts in real time. Throughout the tell-all, Jenn didn't hold back in her assessment of Cody's behavior, pointing out how he acts differently in certain situations and only shows his real personality when he's confronted with truth that he can't spin or deny. Cody acts differently in certain situations, and occasionally the real Cody will finally come out. Jenn explained to Suki during one segment of the tell-all, adding that Cody never comes across in his real personality in most situations because he's so practiced at performing for the cameras and controlling narratives. But according to Jenn, once Cody is confronted with the truth, the real Cody comes out. And we saw exactly that happening throughout part 4, when Cody got increasingly defensive and angry as his lies and manipulation tactics were exposed one by one. The tension between Jenn and Cody had been building all season, as Cody repeatedly blamed Jenn for Meri's decision to leave the family, refusing to accept that maybe his own behavior over 30 years had anything to do with Meri walking away. Cody gets absolutely triggered whenever Jenn's name is mentioned, physically recoiling and getting visibly uncomfortable because Jenn represents everything he can't control, which is someone who sees through his manipulation and isn't afraid to call it out publicly without any concern for maintaining family harmony or protecting his reputation. During the tell-all, when the topic turned to Robin and whether she was submissive to Cody in a way that enabled his worst behavior, Meri and Jenn both weighed in with their observations that Robin's submissiveness works for Cody because it gives him the control and validation he craves without any pushback or accountability. Robin plays the role of the perfect obedient wife who never questions Cody's decisions and always backs him up even when he's clearly wrong. And that dynamic allows Cody to avoid ever having to examine his own behavior or make real changes. That's when Cody completely lost it and called Jenn's assessment full of shit, which was him basically admitting that Jenn had hit too close to the truth and he couldn't handle someone seeing through his and Robin's dynamic so clearly. Cody calling Jenn full of shit on camera was a mask-off moment that showed exactly how threatened he feels by someone who refuses to buy into his victim narrative and who consistently points out the manipulation tactics he uses to avoid accountability. He couldn't argue against what Jenn was saying with facts or logic, so he resorted to name-calling and insults, which is what narcissists do when they're cornered and can't talk their way out of being exposed. The beautiful thing about Cody's outburst is that it proved Jenn's point perfectly, because the real Cody, who came out in that moment, was angry, defensive, insulting, and completely unable to handle being called out on his behavior. If Jenn had been wrong about Cody and Robin's dynamic, he could have calmly explained why she was mistaken and provided examples of times when Robin did push back against him or hold him accountable, but instead he just called her full of shit, which is essentially admitting that she's right, but he's too mad to admit it. The confrontation between Janelle and Jenn's competing versions of events wasn't a direct screaming match where they called each other liars to their faces, but rather a more insidious situation where Janelle denied that certain conversations happened while Jenn backed up Meri's account of events, and Cody's own words contradicted Janelle's version of the story. Janelle maintained throughout the tell-all that she never discussed making a backdoor deal with Cody to sell the property without Meri's involvement, but the evidence suggests that at minimum, she encouraged Cody to consider forcing the sale when she told him, well, you could, in response to his suggestion. Janelle's defense was that she was simply trying to move the property sale forward and avoid losing the buyer, positioning herself as the practical one who was focused on getting everyone their money rather than getting caught up in emotional drama. But Meri and Jenn saw it differently, viewing Janelle's push to force the sale as a betrayal that would have left Meri vulnerable to being cheated out of her fair share, especially given that the ownership paperwork was already messy with Cody and Robin's names on multiple parcels, while Meri's name was nowhere to be found on the legal documents. The real issue that made Meri and Jenn question Janelle's honesty wasn't just the backdoor deal conversation with Cody, but the fact that Janelle had stopped communicating openly with Meri about what was happening with the property negotiations. If Janelle truly had nothing to hide and wasn't conspiring with Cody behind Meri's back, why would she suddenly become evasive and uncommunicative when Meri tried to discuss the sale? That behavior pattern is what convinced Meri that something shady was going on, and Jenn supported Meri's instincts because she had witnessed firsthand how Janelle's communication style had changed from somewhat open to deliberately vague and withholding. Fans watching the tell-all were split on who to believe, with some people siding with Janelle and viewing her as the practical one trying to get business done, while Meri was being difficult and paranoid, while others saw Janelle's behavior as proof that she had been conspiring with Cody and only denied it after getting caught. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, where Janelle genuinely didn't see her conversations with Cody about forcing the sale as constituting a backdoor deal, because in her mind, she was just exploring options to keep the buyer interested. But from Meri's perspective, those exact same conversations represented a betrayal and an attempt to cut her out of decisions about properties she had a stake in. Now, here's where the confrontation gets even more complicated, because there are hints that Janelle and Jenn had some kind of professional relationship in the past that Janelle ended, possibly creating personal animosity between them that goes beyond just Jenn being Meri's friend and defender. And when you understand that backstory, the tension between them makes even more sense. During one portion of the tell-all discussions, there was a reference to Janelle ending a professional relationship with someone. And based on the context and the fact that Jenn Sullivan ran a pest control company in Las Vegas, where the Brown family used to live, fans have speculated that Janelle may have done business with Jenn's company before their relationship soured. If Janelle did end a business relationship with Jenn, that would add a whole other layer of personal tension to their current conflict, because it wouldn't just be about Jenn defending Meri against Cody and Janelle's alleged conspiracy. It would also be about unresolved bad feelings from a professional falling out. Jenn's pest control business operating in Las Vegas during the time when the Browns lived there means she was part of the local business community that the family would have interacted with. And given how small the Mormon and fundamentalist communities are in Las Vegas, it's entirely plausible that Janelle and Jenn crossed paths professionally before Jenn became Meri's best friend. What caused the professional relationship to end is unclear. But if Janelle felt that Jenn had somehow wronged her in business, that could explain why Janelle might be particularly dismissive of Jenn's current involvement in the family drama and why she might view Jenn as having ulterior motives beyond just supporting Meri. From Jenn's perspective, if Janelle did end their professional relationship unfairly or without good cause, that would give Jenn additional reason to distrust Janelle's version of events when it comes to the Coyote Pass situation, because she would have firsthand experience with Janelle being less than straightforward in business dealings. The layers of history and personal grudges between these women make the current accusations of lying even more emotionally charged, because it's not just about one property sale, but about years of accumulated distrust and resentment that finally exploded during the tell-all. The fact that neither Janelle nor Jen has publicly addressed the specifics of their past professional relationship suggests that there might be legal or financial reasons to keep quiet about what happened between them, or simply that they've both decided the details aren't anyone else's business and aren't relevant to the current drama over Coyote Pass. But for fans trying to understand why the tension between Janelle and Jen is so intense, knowing that there might be bad blood from a business relationship gone wrong helps explain why neither woman is willing to give the other the benefit of the doubt when it comes to who's telling the truth about the property sale. Adding fuel to the fire of accusations and counter accusations, Cody and Robin claimed during the season that Meri and Janelle were playing girl games with them during the Coyote Pass negotiations, which is an incredibly dismissive and sexist way to describe women standing up for their financial interests and refusing to be steamrolled. When Suki brought up the girl games accusation during the tell all, Janelle seemed genuinely confused and offended, asking, "What girl games? What could we have been playing?" And insisting that she and Meri were simply trying to get the property sold and receive their fair share of the money. "I don't know what girl games are. I know Meri and I were not doing anything other than trying to just get the project done," Janelle explained, pushing back against the implication that she and Meri had been manipulating or scheming in some coordinated way against Cody and Robin. But the girl games accusation came from a specific interaction earlier in the season when Meri and Janelle met with Cody and Robin to discuss the property. And during that meeting, Cody and Robin refused to even speak directly to Meri and Janelle, claiming later that Robin was picking up on hidden nuance and hostile energy from the other women. Robin, who has positioned herself throughout the series as someone who hates girl games and just wants everyone to be honest and direct, somehow perceived that Meri and Janelle were conspiring against her during this meeting, which seems like projection given that Robin herself was the one who had allegedly made a backdoor deal with Cody to potentially force the sale without Meri's consent. The accusation of girl games is a classic manipulation tactic where you accuse the other person of doing exactly what you're doing yourself, thereby deflecting attention from your own shady behavior and making the other person defensive. Suki suggested to Janelle that maybe Cody and Robin were upset because Janelle and Meri had called Robin submissive during a conversation that aired earlier in the season, and Janelle's response perfectly highlighted the hypocrisy of Cody accusing anyone else of playing games. "He's definitely called me a lot of names in this negotiation," Janelle said with a laugh, pointing out that Cody had been far from civil in his own communication. "Is that a girl game if he calls me names or he makes fun of me? Maybe he's playing girl games too. I don't know," she added, turning the accusation back on Cody and exposing how ridiculous it was for him to claim that women standing up for themselves constitutes manipulation while his own name-calling and insults are somehow acceptable behavior. The girl games narrative is particularly infuriating because it frames any attempt by the women to advocate for themselves or question Cody's decisions as sneaky manipulation, while Cody's own controlling behavior and attempts to force the sale are supposedly just him being a strong leader making tough decisions. It's a double standard that's been present throughout the entire series, where the wives are expected to be submissive and agreeable, and any pushback is labeled as drama or game playing, while Cody can do whatever he wants, and it's justified as him being the head of the household. If there was any remaining doubt about whether Cody and Robin were trying to control and silence Meri during the property sale, that doubt evaporated when it was revealed during part 2 of the tell-all that Robin had attempted to present Meri and Janelle with non-disclosure agreements at the last minute before the sale could go through. According to Janelle, after they had received the first written offer on Coyote Pass and all the signatures were completed within a week, Robin suddenly decided to interject and make demands that ultimately caused the initial deal to fall through completely. The NDAs that Robin wanted Meri and Janelle to sign would have prevented them from talking publicly about the property sale or the family dynamics surrounding it, which Meri immediately recognized as an attempt to silence her and control the narrative about what had happened. "It was all about silencing me," Meri said about the alleged NDA demand. "They didn't want me to talk, and I could not figure out why. So when they say Meri was stopping it, Meri was stopping. Damn right I was, because I'm not fucking going to be silenced again." Meri's refusal to sign an NDA is what Cody and Robin later spun as Meri being difficult and holding up the sale. But from Meri's perspective, she was simply protecting her right to tell her own story and not be legally gagged by people who had already spent years lying about her and manipulating narratives. The fact that Meri referenced not being silenced again suggests this wasn't the first time Cody and Robin had attempted to control what she was allowed to say. And by the time the NDA demand came around, Meri was done playing along with their attempts to manage her. This is where Jenn's role as Meri's ever-present mouthpiece became crucial, because even if Cody and Robin could have somehow legally silenced Meri with an NDA, they couldn't silence Jenn, who wasn't bound by any family loyalty or legal agreement and who was perfectly willing to speak publicly about what she had witnessed. Meri even joked during the tell-all, "Even if you can, good luck trying to silence my ever-present mouthpiece, Jenn," acknowledging that having Jenn as her advocate meant she would never truly be silenced, no matter what legal documents Cody and Robin tried to make her sign. The NDA attempt also raises serious questions about what exactly Cody and Robin were so afraid Meri would say publicly about the property sale, because if everything had been above board and fair, why would they need legal documents preventing anyone from talking about it? The only reason to demand NDAs in a property transaction between family members is if you're worried that someone might expose shady dealings or unfair treatment, which suggests that Cody and Robin knew their behavior during the negotiations wouldn't look good under public scrutiny. The most damaging revelation about who was lying and who was telling the truth didn't come from anything Janelle or Jenn said directly to each other, but rather from what Robin admitted about her own actions during the property negotiations and what that admission revealed about the conspiracy to cut Meri out. And when you hear what Robin said, you're going to understand why Meri stopped trusting any of them. When Suki asked Robin during the tell-all why she hadn't warned Meri that Cody and Janelle were potentially planning a backdoor deal to sell the property without her, Robin's response was incredibly telling about where her loyalties actually lie, despite her claims of wanting everyone to be treated fairly. "I'm not going to sit there and be disloyal to Cody," Robin stated plainly, admitting that even if she had known that Meri was about to be screwed over, she wouldn't have warned her because doing so would have been disloyal to Cody. Robin tried to justify her silence by claiming that if she and Meri had remained close friends, then that could be something to say to me, but not now. "She has burned so many bridges with me and I don't know why," positioning herself as the victim who had been wronged by Meri rather than the enabler who stood by while Meri was potentially being cheated. But Robin's admission that loyalty to Cody trumps any concern for Meri's financial well-being perfectly illustrates why Meri was right not to trust any communication coming from Cody or Robin during the property negotiations. If Robin openly admits that she wouldn't warn Meri about being cheated because it would be disloyal to Cody, then what else has Robin kept quiet about over the years when Cody was treating Meri terribly? What other schemes or plans has Robin been aware of but refused to speak up about because calling them out would have made Cody upset with her? Robin's statement validates everything Meri and Jenn have been saying about the family dynamics, which is that Robin's primary concern has always been maintaining her position as Cody's favorite, rather than looking out for her sister wives or ensuring everyone is treated fairly. This is where Janelle's denials start to look even more suspicious, because if Robin admits she knew about potential plans to cut Meri out but stayed silent, and if Cody admits he discussed forcing the sale with Janelle, then Janelle's claim that no backdoor deal ever existed doesn't hold up under the weight of everyone else's testimony. Either Janelle is lying about her involvement, or she genuinely doesn't see her conversations with Cody about forcing the sale as constituting a backdoor deal, because in her mind, she was just being practical about moving the sale forward. What the Janelle versus Jenn confrontation really reveals isn't just about who's lying about one specific property sale, but about how completely broken the trust has become between all of these people after decades of polygamy destroyed their ability to believe anything anyone says. Meri doesn't trust Janelle because Janelle married Meri's brother before divorcing him and marrying Meri's husband. And that original boundary violation set the tone for 30 years of suspicion and resentment. Janelle doesn't trust Jenn because she sees Jenn as an outsider who's poisoning Meri against the family, rather than acknowledging that maybe Meri has legitimate reasons for being angry. Jenn doesn't trust Janelle because she watched Janelle's communication with Meri become deliberately evasive during the property negotiations, and she heard Cody admit that he and Janelle had discussed cutting Meri out, which validates Meri's instincts that something shady was happening. Cody doesn't trust any of his ex-wives because he's convinced they're all lying about him and conspiring together to destroy his reputation, when in reality, they're just telling the truth about how he treated them. And Robin claims everyone has burned bridges with her while refusing to acknowledge her own role in enabling and participating in the dysfunction that drove 3 women away from the family. The tell all confrontation, where Janelle and Jen's competing versions of events clashed, isn't going to be resolved with some clear determination of who was lying and who was telling the truth. Because in dysfunctional families like this, everyone is operating from their own version of reality where they're the victim and everyone else is the problem. Janelle genuinely might believe she wasn't conspiring with Cody behind Meri's back, viewing her actions as simply trying to be practical about the sale, while Meri and Jenn see those exact same actions as betrayal and deliberate deception. The property eventually sold in April 2025, with everyone supposedly receiving their 25% share of the $1.5 million sale price. Though Cody complained bitterly that he hadn't been properly compensated for the extra money he claims to have put into the property and for the loan that Meri and Janelle had given him and Robin to buy Robin's house. The financial resolution didn't repair any of the broken relationships or resolve any of the accusations about who was lying about what. It just allowed everyone to walk away with their money and never have to deal with each other again. Janelle joked to Meri that getting her 25% was a nice way to just be like, see you later. Hope I never see you again. Goodbye. Which pretty much sums up where these former sister wives stand in relation to each other now that the financial ties have been severed. Janelle has also hinted strongly that season 20 might be her last on Sister Wives, posting on Instagram about leaving the show and leaving a marriage as part of her journey of shedding old identities, which means if she does walk away from the series, we might never get full clarity on what really happened during those Coyote Pass negotiations. Meri has made it clear she's done with the entire Brown family except for whatever relationship she maintains with her adult child, Leon. And having Jenn by her side during the tell-all was her way of showing that she has support and advocacy that doesn't depend on family loyalty or fear of Cody's reactions. Jen's willingness to call out what she sees and to back up Meri's version of events gives Meri something she never had during her 30 years in the family, which is someone who will publicly validate her experiences rather than gaslighting her into thinking she's overreacting or misremembering what happened. The confrontation between Janelle and Jenn may not have involved them directly calling each other liars in a dramatic screaming match, but the competing narratives they presented about the Coyote Pass sale and about Janelle's involvement in potential backdoor deals amounts to exactly that, each of them implying that the other's version of events is false and their own version is the truth. Whether viewers believe Janelle's denials or Meri and Jen's accusations probably comes down to which Brown family member they've been rooting for all along, because after 20 seasons of watching this family implode, everyone has their favorites and their villains. What's undeniable, regardless of whose version you believe, is that the trust between these women is permanently destroyed in a way that can never be repaired. And the Coyote Pass sale was just the final battleground where all that accumulated resentment and suspicion played out in accusations of lying and betrayal. The property is sold, the money is divided, and the family is scattered across different states with no intention of ever coming back together, which means the only thing left to fight about is whose version of history will be remembered as the truth when people look back on how the Brown family fell apart. If you're obsessed with sister wives drama and want even more deep dives into the Brown family dysfunction, make sure you check out the Soul Sister Wives channel, where we break down every episode, analyze every confrontation, and expose all the lies and manipulation that Cody and Robin try to hide from the cameras.